views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this District Perspectives, we'll discuss the latest of the COVID-19 pandemic. Plus, we'll also talk about the New York City budget and how that's actually affecting city residents as they prepare for this next financial move. Also, we'll talk about the future leadership of the borough of the Bronx. That and much more is straight ahead on this District Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime, and of course, we thank you for joining us. As always, you can watch Perspectives every week here on Bronx's Channel 67. If you have Verizon, that would be Channel 2133, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. We also encourage you, stay connected to us. How do you go about doing that? Well, what you can do is simply go to all of our social networking sites at BronxNet TV. There you can find some past episodes, find out what's happening, and then also be able to share your comment, your perspective, because we do know we want to hear from you. Got a very special show coming up for us today as we are talking about a lot of the issues that pertain to not just the Bronx, but really New York City. And today, a very special guest. She represents the 16th Councilmatic District in New York City. She's an advocate for affordable housing, low-income families, and opportunities for youth. This year, COVID-19 has played a wild impact, particularly in the borough of the Bronx and for Bronx residents. And she's looking to provide more in the area of resources, and here now to talk more about what is going on, not just in the borough of the Bronx, but for all of us citywide. We have got Bronx Councilwoman Vanessa Gibson, who's sharing with us here on Perspectives. And Councilwoman Gibson, good to have you.
Hi, Darren. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me today.
No, glad to have you. And as you come in the middle of, well, the other side of the COVID pandemic. I mean, we're starting to get to a place where we are reopening. But give us a little bit about how COVID-19 has really impacted yourself and then those in the in your 16th district.
Well, when the COVID-19 pandemic first hit in March, I think it was really turning our world upside down. It was nothing that we could have ever imagined nor be prepared for. We saw many New Yorkers contracting this disease and being hospitalized, placed on ventilators, all of the things that, we obviously are now seeing come to light. Thousands of New Yorkers have lost their lives to the COVID-19 pandemic, many Bronx residents, many older New Yorkers with underlying health conditions. So I've lost constituents. Many of my friends and neighbors that I've known, one of my family members was affected by it, but thankfully he was asymptomatic. But, it just goes to show you that this disease had no name, had no, underlying issues. It had no targets. It affected each and every one of us in some way.
Yeah, it's affected a lot of people. And so how have you had to shift? I mean, all of us have had to make the adjustments through COVID-19. How are you able to shift and be able to reach your constituents, given the fact that you've got a large district and at the same time being able to keep the pulse of what's going on?
Right, so at the very beginning in early March, we reached out to our tenant leaders and civic leaders and clergy members, faith-based leaders, many who had an audience and a membership, congregation, tenants. And we reached out to them to help organize meetings remotely, to learn about COVID, to make sure that we promoted testing opportunities. We really have to get a handle on this because we wanted to stop it in its tracks. And then fast forward, we held many food distributions, as well as giving out face masks and hand sanitizers and access to PPE, because we knew that was a way to keep people safe. Everyone was in their homes. Children were learning remotely. So a lot of people needed access to food. They didn't want to go outside. They were very worried and scared and nervous, obviously, for many reasons. We worked with the administration, with health officials, with DOE, with many agencies on getting information out using social media, emails, phone calls. We had a lot of events on the ground with social distancing in place. And then fast forward to August, to where we are today, where the numbers are very low of hospitalizations, of death rates, which we are grateful for. It shows that all of our efforts have been successful and are working. But I also think we have to prevent a second wave in the fall. We have to continue to promote testing, test and tracing initiatives. We also have to do a lot around healthcare. Residents of the Bronx face the highest health disparities around heart disease, obesity, and asthma, and that is for a reason, and we have to address that both short-term and long-term.
Yeah, residents are dealing with a lot, and not just residents are dealing with a lot. I want to talk a little bit about the hospitals that are in your councilmatic district. You've got hospitals in your district. Talk to us about what you heard in terms of, because we knew that there was a struggle for PPE. We knew that they felt overworked and understaffed. Talk to us about what you were hearing with boots on the ground from the hospitals.
I represent Bronx Care Hospital on the Grand Concourse and Fulton Avenue, but working with H&H, I represent Gotham Morrisania, which is a community-based health clinic, and really working with all of our providers like Morris Heights, Union Healthcare, Urban Health Plan, many of our CDOs that are on the ground doing a lot of telehealth, conference calls, and reaching out to clients remotely. I think initially in March and April, we were struggling to get access to PPE and ventilators. There was a real shortage, overworked staff. Many of the nursing and doctors were very worried about, contaminating themselves and exposing themselves and their families that they returned home to. So we developed, a lot of efforts to provide food on the ground and deliver lunch and dinner, really support essential workers who are predominantly women and women of color that were serving residents, keeping them safe and alive. We had an abundance of, need with funeral homes and funeral directors. You saw a lot of the efforts around morgues where they were over capacity because we had so many deceased residents who died to the COVID-19 pandemic. And fast forward, things are a lot better now. The hospitalizations are a lot lower. Those that are on ventilators are a lot lower as well. We're still not yet out of the woods fully, but the hospitals played a critical role. I think it highlights, though, the support that hospitals and medical institutions have needed from the very beginning in terms of the resources, the equipment, the staffing. Everyone was overworked. They were working around the clock. We had to bring in nurses and doctors from other places that came to help us because we were really in a crisis mode.
Yeah, and we know that a lot of people have definitely been affected, infected, and the results are still going to be far-reaching in terms of finding out exactly how COVID-19 impacted our borough. But before we go to break, I want to get this question out to you. Talk to me about how you feel the borough of the Bronx actually responded to this COVID-19 pandemic.
I am so proud of the Bronx. Bronx residents stepped up and just really showed their true colors of who we are as a borough. The resiliency, the strength that borough residents have is just really just so heartwarming to see. Neighbors helping neighbors, friends helping friends, family members helping family members on food distribution, of PPE, of giving out hand sanitizers, face masks, food distribution. Many of our leaders at NYCA were around delivering food, door to door. We were checking on neighbors. We lost some of our seniors that were isolated in their homes because a lot of them had not been checked on by neighbors and family and friends. But obviously the Bronx has been through a lot. We've had very, very dark days, the burnout, the disinvestment, and the Bronx always bounces back, and I truly believe we will do so around COVID-19. But I'm always reminded of the strength of Bronx residents. You don't need a title in front of your name to care. We have stepped up. We've spent our own money and our own resources to help. Many people needed clothing and food, grab-and-go meals, just every day checking on people because folks felt isolated. Many were suicidal. Many people felt loneliness. They just didn't think anyone cared. No one checked on them, many of our elders. So I'm really grateful and so proud of all the Bronx residents that stood up to help each other.
Yeah, Bronx strong, Bronx strong, Bronx
Always.
strong. Listen, gotta take a quick break. When we come back, gonna talk with Councilmember Gibson about the New York City budget. We know that budget cuts are possibly looming, not possibly, definitely looming. Let's talk about that when we return right here on Perspective. Stay with us. We're coming right back in a few. Welcome back here to Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you. So glad to have you sharing with us as we continue to bring you the news, the information, the things that you need to know across the borough of the Bronx as well as across New York City as we all are trying to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, we're not in the studio. We continue to do things virtually. That is one of the adjustments that have been made due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it doesn't stop us from bringing you news and information and people, influencers, the people that you need to hear and know, the information that you need to know in order to make it. Our guest today, Vanessa Gibson, who is the council member from the 16th Councilmatic District in the borough of the Bronx, talking a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted her district, but then now we also want to talk about New York City and the budget. And Councilmember Gibson, I want to talk to you about the budget because a lot of us in New York City are very much concerned about how this is going to play out financially. We know that cuts were made statewide with the governor's budget. That trickled down to the city. And so for you as a council member, what was it like coming out of COVID, having to deal with this budget that is a lot leaner and in some senses, some people are very, very on edge?
It wasn't easy. It was a painful process. It was honestly, in my 7 years in the council, one of the toughest, most challenging budgets I've ever dealt with. I cried because of the decisions that were before the city council. So the city council passes a budget based on the mayor's executive budget, and we went into this budget season with a $9 billion budget deficit. The COVID-19 pandemic left us with a $7 billion loss of revenue. We were cut in Albany with their adopted budget at $2 billion, and we had to balance a budget. We had no revenue from the state, no additional revenue from the federal government, and we essentially had reserves and cuts. And the administration put forth a series of cuts that we did not agree with, like the complete decimation of all summer youth programs and summer camp, cuts to the single shepherd program, CUNY ASAP, cuts to education like community schools. We didn't agree with any of those, but in order for us to balance the budget, we have to make serious decisions and cuts. So all of the agencies were cut to some level, as well as the defund the NYPD movement that you saw that started in May following the horrific murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And that led to a lot of advocates talking about the NYPD's almost $6 billion budget and how some of that money could be shifted to social services, healthcare, youth programs, and programs that really will serve residents that were hit the hardest by the pandemic. So fast forward to us trying to get to a place of adoption by July 1st, which is the start of our fiscal year. We couldn't wait past July 1st because CBOs needed their budgets to start programs. So we really couldn't allow this process to linger. We also had to save jobs. We wanted to protect the school safety agents, the social workers, guidance counselors, teachers, many essential workers who are predominantly men and women of color. We could not allow them to lose their jobs. So putting all of that on the line, we shifted $1 billion in expense funds from the NYPD to summer youth, summer camp, Compass, Sonic, Beacon, Cornerstone programs, healthcare, mental health, and other programs. And we ultimately used that money to balance the budget. Some people think we had a blank check for $1 billion, but it's not an exact exchange. It doesn't work like that. So overall, we used about $6 billion of capital reserves, which we've been pushing the administration to put in every year, and we were able to get it done. But what you're now seeing is a serious reduction in sanitation and parks. You're seeing excessive trash all over the place, all over the city. You're seeing parks that are not cleaned as they should have been. You're seeing a reduction in sanitation and park staff, and that is a result of serious cuts. Where we are now is we are desperately in need of federal dollars in the stimulus plan from the federal government. We are also asking for the authority from the state legislature to borrow money in the billions as we did after 9/11, right? This situation is dire and calls for a consideration of borrowing in the long term so that we not only address this current fiscal climate, but we also address our $5 billion deficit for FY22 moving forward. And also, really important, we avoid laying off 22,000 city workers on October 1st.
When we talk about city workers, public safety is of major concern. We know the New York City Police Department is a part of that. When we talk about the New York City Police Department, you talked and led into talking about possibly defunding the police department, funds being actually taken away from the police department and redirected. So give us your perspective on that. You've heard the cries of the people. You've heard what they've said with regards to defunding the police and actually moving some of that money around. Given the fact that there were these massive cuts, what do you say to people who say, listen, we do need to make some massive changes in regards to how we fund public safety?
I would say to my constituents that have reached out to me, we did our very best as a city council. It wasn't easy. It was a painful process, but we were left with very few options. We did the best we could under the circumstances. We cut the NYPD like never before. Their budget has never been cut by $1 billion. But there were some that wanted to cut more, and we simply could not allow that to happen. We have to redefine what public safety looks like in our community. That doesn't just mean NYPD and the deployment of police officers. Some people think we did too much. Some people think we didn't do enough. But the reality is everyone deserves to be safe. No matter what neighborhood you live in, no matter what socioeconomic status you fall in, everyone has an ability and should be safe as they travel in our streets. We are dealing with a horrific wave of shootings and crime in certain communities across the city, and we have to respond to that, but not just the NYPD. The NYPD will do their part, but we have to do our part too. Crisis management, anti-gun violence, clergy, community groups, partners, tenant leaders, civic leaders, everyone has to do their part. It's not just the NYPD. This is not their problem. This is our problem. These are our children that are engaging in violence, that have guns and weapons for a reason. We have to change their alternatives and offer them jobs and programs so that they don't feel they have to pick up a gun. Redefining what policing and public safety looks like in our communities. And I know people are very upset. They're seeing the city go down. They're seeing their quality of life be disrupted. And they're very, very worried about what the future looks like. But I want to remind everyone that we've had worse times when crime was much higher in the 80s and the 90s. And we don't want to return there. But we have to say to ourselves, how do we fix this problem? We, us, all together, cops, police, clergy, community, elected officials, we're all in this together because we have to save our children, give them the ability to live. Young people deserve to live. Children shouldn't die. Parents shouldn't bury their children. The 1-year-old that was shot in Bed-Stuy is unacceptable. Parents like Eve Hendricks, who buried her 17-year-old son, Brandon, who graduated from high school and was college bound. That's not normal, and it never will be. We have to denounce all violence, violence against police, violence against our community, against our young people. We don't tolerate any of that, and we have to find a balance. We need police. Police need us. We need each other, and we have to realize that we're all in this together. So I hope people understand that at the end of the day, we did the best we could in the city council. Could we have done more? Absolutely. But given the options on the table, no federal dollars, no state dollars, no support, no additional revenue, billions of dollars lost because of COVID, we have to make those hard decisions. And I hope that the state and the federal government realize the magnitude of what we're facing, and we get the ability to borrow and or federal support, and we're able to deal with this climate as well as moving forward. So 22,000 city workers, majority of whom will be people and women of color, do not lose their jobs on October 1st. We have to avoid that at all costs.
Going to come back and talk more with you. I want to talk about the future of Bronx leadership. Got to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk about where does the Bronx go from here by way of political leadership. Councilwoman Gibson will give us those answers when we return right here on Perspectives. We're back here on Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you. We are continuing our conversation with Councilwoman Vanessa Gibson, and she's been sharing a little bit about COVID-19, talking about the New York City budget and how those cuts really were. I mean, there's no winning when it comes to making cuts. But I also want to get to the place of political leadership. And Councilwoman Gibson, I want to ask you the question. I mean, a lot of people are talking about what does the future hold for the borough of the Bronx, particularly in leadership. We see a lot of changes. We see also, new people being elected. How do you see the future of Bronx leadership playing out? And I'll get to you in a few seconds.
The future of the Bronx will be determined by the voters of the Bronx. In 2021, we have the opportunity to elect a new Bronx Borough president, new leaders in the city council that will lead the next administration to the next horizon of what New York City will be. Protecting New Yorkers, protecting homeowners, property owners, tenants, seniors, the LGBT community, youth, families, children, all of the safety net programs that we have invested in. And voters of the Bronx expect strong leadership. They expect candidates running for office to step up and have real, tangible, comprehensive solutions. They don't want talkers, they want doers. You have to be doers of the word. You have to talk about it, but you have to be about it as well. You have to have a track record of accomplishments of things that you have done. You can't just talk about what you want to do, but what have you been doing? People, whether you're elected or not, whether you have a title or not, what have you done to help your neighbor, your friend, your family, your congregation, park cleanup, civic engagement, efforts to unite young people, to empower them, to help mobilize young people, to give them the voices they already have. So the voters of the Bronx are in a very important place. And educating young people, making sure that we not only encourage them to vote, but we provide every opportunity to vote early, to vote on the same day registration, making sure that we don't disenfranchise voters and suppress the vote. Too many have died for that right to vote. Young people need to understand the history behind voting. and we have to help educate them so they understand the power they have to be a part of the solution and not the problem. The voters of the Bronx will have the ability next June to elect a new borough president, to continue to push the borough, to elevate the borough, and certainly after COVID, we've had a setback. Our unemployment rate was as high as almost 14% when Reuben took over in 2009, and now we went down to almost 6.5% pre-COVID, and now we're up to 20%. The majority of our Bronx residents have lost their income. They don't have a job. They can't take care of their families. Those are real problems that we have to solve. The only way we solve that is by engaging stakeholders and everyday residents on what they need, what they want to see in their leadership. Do they want to see leaders that step up, that don't stand on the sidelines when times are tough? Leaders that recognize the voice, the power, the purpose that we have, but a plan of action, taking our pain and turning it into purpose. That's what we have to do as a borough. We are strong. We've been through so much as a borough. Those dark days that many of you remember when no one cared about the Bronx. People gave up on us. They said we were burning. But look at where we are today, thriving. And yes, COVID was a setback. I understand it was a real setback. But if you know, like I know, every setback is preparation for a comeback. And so I look forward to working with every resident, every elected official in my capacity now as a council member for District 16. A lot of the work over my tenure will be recovery of COVID-19 and how we get back and bounce back to normalcy. But moving forward, I look forward to talking to voters about my campaign for borough president and what voters want to see in their new leadership and how I can be that leader and that voice for them.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to really get to ask you the forthright question. So you are launching yourself as a candidate for borough president.
Yes, I am. Yes, absolutely. Exciting.
Yeah. Well, we want you to continue to stay connected to us as you launch your campaign. You've always been a friend of this show, and as the voters continue to make their decision, and as you continue to campaign, it's our prayer and our hope that you have the opportunity to come back and talk to us and then talk to Bronxites as well.
Absolutely. Daren, you've always been a friend. I've been on Perspective so many times through my tenure, and you've always allowed me a space to talk about issues, both good and bad. You have to be real with voters, right? Don't sugarcoat things. Things are not good right now, and we should not accept the way things are. But we are optimistic. We are full of faith. We're full of hope because our children deserve it. They deserve to have a better future than us. And so we can't give up on them. We can't give up on the possibilities that lie ahead. And I remain ready, willing, and able to work for the people, for my district, for my seniors, for my children, for everyday residents that are working really hard to save their children, to give them an option, to work with us, to walk with us together, because we have to be united. We are one borough. We throw our X's up for a reason because we are one borough, Bronx strong, moving this community forward.
Councilwoman Vanessa Gibson, thank you so much for being with us here on Perspectives. Got to leave it there. Great conversation with you. We hope to have you soon.
Thank you, Daren. Thanks again.
All righty. Well, listen, everybody, that about wraps up this edition of Perspectives. As I said, I am Daren Jaime. Thank you for joining us. Please be sure to watch on BronxNet every week, Channel 67. If you have Verizon Files, that's Channel 2133. And, of course, don't forget about those past episodes that you can actually catch on BronxNet.org. Listen, for all of us here with Perspectives, stay safe, share your perspective with somebody else. You just don't know. It might make a difference in someone else's life. Take care, and God bless.